Mm. It's got this slightly sweet, kind of like gummy texture, kind of like, you know, like gummy candies because of the mochi. And you do get the butter flavor, but it's not overwhelmingly butter. Let me show you how we make Japanese butter mochi. When you go to most Japanese supermarkets, you'll find a bag of pre-cut mochi. And pre-cut mochi is individually wrapped, kind of, you know, already prepared, like, so like the rice has been pounded and turned into the gelatinous mochi, and then it's been cut, and it's hard. You can't eat this by itself. Because it's a little too tough to do that way. So normally what you would do is take it out of the package and just put it over a grill, or a shichirin, which is the Japanese little kind of a hibachi grill. And a lot of these, the manufacturers will have already put like little cuts into them so that they actually split where those lines are, and it like puffs up, and the inside mochi is like super soft, the outside is kind of crunchy. And that's how we eat mochi when we're not like at a traditional mochi pounding ceremony, which usually happens like around New Year's. So, but these keep very well. So, so most Japanese households will have the already pre-prepared, pre-cut mochis in their home. To make butter mochi, Japanese style, you would unwrap each of these, and dip them in water, because what you're trying to do instead of grilling these is actually steam them so the whole thing becomes nice and soft and pliable again without any of the crunchy exterior. In a bowl, I've got 2 tablespoons of water already, and you're going to dip your mochi slice in and then just put it in the separate bowl. And I'm making enough for like 2 people, so I'm using 3 pieces of cut mochi for this. We're going to just put some plastic wrap over the bowl with the mochi. And then you're going to pop this into the microwave for like 1.5 to 2 minutes. So we're coming up to the last 30 seconds. So while we're waiting for that to finish up, I'm gonna go ahead and take an egg and split it, because all we need is the yolk for this dish. Once the mochi is cooked, we're going to go ahead and take the plastic wrap off, and just be careful because it's steamy. And you're going to go ahead and take your spatula and just kind of make sure that everything is soft and you don't have any like hard little bits from the dehydrated mochi squares. And if it seems like it's not quite done, you can pop this back in the microwave. And remember, you're steaming this, so you'll have to put plastic wrap on it again. But in my case, it looks like 2 minutes is the right amount. Okay, so to this hot mochi goo, You're gonna go ahead and add 2.5 tablespoons of sugar. I'm just using cane sugar here. And a pinch of salt. And what you're also going to do is you're going to use half of the egg yolk. But I tend to want to kind of mix these more like granulated ingredients in first. And you do kind of have to work this while the mochi is still hot. Once it, cools down, it's going to be difficult to mix everything in. Then you're going to add 1/2 of a yolk. And you can actually leave this out if you'd like. It gets really left in there more for the color, to add like this kind of buttery yellow color to the mochi. But it's just as good without the egg yolk in it. It'll just look like a very pale cream color if you do it without the egg yolk. Okay, and once that has come together, you're going to add, this is 7 grams of butter, which ends up being like 1.5 teaspoons. And you're just going to fold the butter in. And at this point, it still looks kind of gooey and gelatinous and not really like something that you can cut. But you're going to add our final ingredient, which is our beloved katakuriko, which is Japanese potato starch. And you're going to add 1/2 tablespoon of katakuriko to this mixture. And what the katakuriko does is it'll help seize up this mochi so it becomes something that you can form and cut to serve as a dessert. Now this mixture then gets placed in like a small, shallow baking dish. Doesn't have to be baking. It can actually be a piece. It could be Tupperware or even like a plastic container, because all you're doing is you're wanting to shape this into squares that you can cut. So I usually put a layer of katakuriko on the bottom. It won't stick to the container because it's got butter in it, but you're going to be using the katakuriko on all sides anyway, so it's just, might as well. Just go ahead and put that on the bottom. And then you're going to put your butter mochi on that. And by now everything's kind of, it's warm to the touch, so you can actually handle it with your fingers or your spatula. And you just kind of want to form it. You kind of want to make it an even thickness all the way around, just so it's pretty when you present it later. So whereas Hawaiian butter mochi is a batter that then you need to bake, and it also uses mochi rice. It's just mochiko is already a super fine kind of milled flour. In this case, we're actually using actual mochi squares. So it's a little bit different in terms of how it comes together in a recipe. But what we're going to do now is just let this sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. You do not need to put this in the fridge. You just want the katakuriko and the mochi and all of those ingredients to kind of melt together and set. The Japanese butter mochi has been sitting for about 10-15 minutes. It's still a little warm underneath, but it's definitely not hot. I've actually added another layer of katakuriko potato starch to the top, just to kind of keep it from being too sticky. We're going to now take our trusty butter knife, appropriate for butter mochi, I guess. And they do recommend that you kind of dip it into your katakuriko so that it stays dry and like the mochi doesn't stick to it. So we're going to go ahead and cut this into thirds. And we're going to cut it probably one, two, three, probably 5 pieces across. You kind of want to make them a little bit larger than bite size, but not huge. And then for presentation purposes, I'm going to pick the prettiest ones out of this bunch. And I always like serving 3 because 3 is a lucky number. And so there you have our Japanese butter mochi. I'm going to go ahead and try one out of this tray. It's got this slightly sweet, kind of like gummy texture, kind of like, like gummy candies because of the mochi. And you do get the butter flavor, but it's not overwhelmingly butter. Kind of like Hawaiian butter mochi is. This is a much more delicate Wagashi, Japanese sweet that can be enjoyed with a cup of tea or coffee, I guess, because it's butter. So butter is a Western ingredient. So I would say enjoy this with green tea, but I think coffee or a latte would be a really good accompaniment as well. And because it's mochi, you are going to chew on this for quite a while. So if you're somebody who likes soft mochi flavors, I wouldn't cut this up into small pieces and put this into like a boba or a frozen yogurt, which I think is the most popular way people know about how to eat soft mochi. This has the same exact texture as that. But I wouldn't necessarily use this recipe for what you would use in like to put into like a milk tea or to put onto like a frozen yogurt, because I don't think that the texture would work under in liquid situations or like on yogurt. I don't know. I think it might just be too chewy. But I don't know. Maybe you can try cutting these into much smaller pieces and it might work. I don't know. I kind of like them by themselves. I hope you try making Japanese style butter mochi in your kitchen soon. Like I said, super simple and easy to make. All it really takes is a microwave and a couple of ingredients, including store-bought mochi. I will be doing an episode where I do a Hawaiian butter mochi so you can kind of compare between the two. But this is a super simple, old-timey Wagashi snack that was developed in Japan, in northern Japan, in like the Hokkaido Akita dairy land of Japan, which is probably why they have butter in their mochi. I hope you try this. I know you'll love it. And I will see you next time. Bye.